Perch is here to break it down. Every tale and every crown. Comics by Perch, it's your guide. Dive in deep, don't run
Hey everybody, this is Perch.
hide.
It's actually a new video. I did the stream from Wes on Thinking Critical today. It's a Saturday, so I have no idea when this video comes out. I'll try and push it along a little faster so it, so it's at least somewhat timely. But I didn't know what the topic of the show was going to be. And Wes said, hey, you want to come on and talk comics? I'm like, I could use a break from all this other nonsense. I'll come on and talk comics. And so I did. And I look at the thumbnail right as I'm going in. The thumbnail is like, James Gunn has ruined the DCU. And I'm like, oh man, this isn't going to be good for me because I don't think he has. But what's tough about it is that I am not a big James Gunn fan. I mean, I can actually list off the things I like and dislike about James Gunn, and I get there's more things I dislike than like. I don't like his humor. I think I don't know. It's too. One, it's too juvenile, and two, he goes to kind of the same well for the humor over and over and over again, so it starts to feel repetitive to me. I think he tends to build up stakes and then cut the knees out from under them, so you don't get the true payoff that arguably you should get from the moments he creates. I'm not the biggest fan of James Gunn. This predates his work on comic book movies. He's not been my favorite director or writer. People like to forget this part. I do the show, and basically part of the premise that I was arguing is like, there's actually no concrete evidence that Superman lost a bunch of money. People are pointing to a Forbes article or an article on like Park Place or Cosmic Book News or these other sites that is basically sourcing from the Forbes article, which is also somewhat sourced from a variety of articles. But both those articles are done by contributors, not by staffers. And, I have articles of my own, a lot of them on Forbes under my real name. It's easy to get there. You do not have to be good. I'm not good at writing articles, and I've got them up there. And so it's become a little bit of a closed echo chamber, but there's just the numbers that are being thrown out are not accurate. Now, if you believe them, if you believe it lost money and you believe these articles, that, that's your right to do it. But the math doesn't add up, is I guess my point. And I think you should be naturally skeptical. Maybe this is a generational thing, but for me, I'm naturally skeptical about everything I am told. I am skeptical when Disney says this is a #1 grossing movie of all time. Peacemaker season 2 supposedly had a 99% Rotten Tomatoes rating at one point. I am skeptical. I believe that is gamed. Not because I think Peacemaker was a pile of shit, but because that's just I don't buy numbers like that. I don't think things work in those kinds of extremes. There's plenty to like and dislike about these shows, so I look at this stuff and that's how I see it. But if you remember my review of Superman, my opinion of it was that it was, I was giving it a 4 or 5 out of 10, like below average. And it wasn't, but what I have found is that the things I didn't like about the movie are not the same things others didn't like about the movie. I think that Lois Lane is more or less fine. I didn't think she had too many girl boss scenes. Apparently some of you did. I didn't think that Superman was cucked in the movie or shown to be too weak. To the contrary, I mean, one of the things I think they did get right is that the kind of the whole nature of Superman is that the nature of his character, and it's similar for people like Captain America and Spider-Man, is that they get up and they fight even when the odds are against them. They do the right thing when it is the hard thing. That is the nature of their characters. So the idea that Superman's getting, challenged and beat up and, he's like, I got to get back in the fight. And it's like, sir, you're only at 60%. It's like, don't care. You just got beat up at 100%. It's still the right thing to do. He's going to do it even though he's facing death because that's Superman. That's what Superman would do. So I think they got that part right. And I think it helped hammer it home that Superman was shown as vulnerable at times and that he did need help from others, but then he stood up for others. I like those parts. The things I didn't like, I think were different. I didn't like how, 30 seconds of a news broadcast and suddenly the entire world is turned on Superman because his dad's out there going, hey, just bone everything you can, boy. Like, that doesn't seem realistic that public opinion would sway immediately. You had people willing to sacrifice their lives for Superman 15 minutes earlier in the movie. And now, about 5 minutes earlier in the movie, And now you've got people throwing cans at Superman's head because he's, going to breed all of the women's. I mean, just like this, public opinion would not shift like that. And so that those kinds of things bother me. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a personal choice of whether you like these movies or not. One thing we didn't get to, I meant to bring it up on the stream though, and it's kind of the crux of this video, is this. I'm sure some of you will want to argue about the finances. I mean, go ahead if you feel compelled to do that. But that's not where I want to. That's, I mean, at this point, I'm like, shrug. The numbers are out there. These are public companies. You can start to look some of this stuff up. It's a matter of public record. You have to. It's like when the Captain Marvel stuff came up, and I got a big fight with a bunch of YouTubers. I mean, I got live streamed and clipped a bunch because people were like, I think Disney is buying out all these seats and completely faking the numbers for Captain Marvel because there's no way that movie made $1 billion. It's like, I mean, yeah, I think it did. And I think sometimes shitty movies make a lot of money. And I don't think Captain Marvel is a good movie. And, this is coming from somebody who was supposed to like it because we were going to tie into a bunch of member berries for the 90s of, hey, we're going to put some No Doubt in here and we're going to, reference Nirvana at one point. And it's like, okay, stop, just stop. But here's something I meant to bring up the stream that I didn't. And it's kind of the question for all of you. And this is maybe a more controversial question. I'm 6 minutes into the video, and probably the title of this video will reference this question. So already I've lost some of you, but the people are going to dip out at this point and then post like, I don't even know what this guy was talking about. They're not the people who want to answer this question anyway. This is for you, the smart person, the person who's still here. I think the studios, Marvel, but Marvel's kind of already a little bit too late with this, but DC still has an opportunity. I think they need to stop worrying about their freaking shared universe. Stop worrying about setting up the next film. Stop worrying about introducing these characters in every movie. It worked for Marvel once upon a time. You do the little post-credit thing and you have the little stinger at the end, and then you had to bleed in some of the stuff into the movie because post-credits weren't enough and all that. And I get all that, but I think you guys have created a major trap for yourselves where you're just bundling your films with the weight of a shared universe as opposed to just, is this movie good? I think it's time we went back a little bit to the world of just standalone movies. The Matt Reeves Batman movie was pretty good. It didn't, it didn't really lead to anything else. Yes, you had a Penguin kind of spinoff, but when you watched that Batman movie, you weren't thinking I'm getting Penguin next. It was just kind of there. Yeah, you had the little bit at the end with the Joker, but it really wasn't leading to anything else. I think that these movies are now so, desperate or basically they're putting so much pressure on themselves. Like, we've got to build the entire DCU, that it gets in the way of actually just telling a good story, of actually, putting out a movie. And I think it would be smart if these studios just said, you know what, forget the shared universe for a moment. Let's not worry about any of that stuff. Let's just make these things and just go nuts, and we'll worry about crossovers later if we ever get to it. But right now, let's try and have a Green Lantern franchise where we could have, 6 movies. 6. Like, let's have a Star Trek-like franchise of Green Lantern with all the different mythology and the different story, everything we can do. And don't worry about having to have a special cameo by Supergirl here, and how is this going to set up the Creature Commando show over here. And we got to reference Wonder Woman because we're going to do something with her in 3 years. I think that's the stuff that is getting in the way of a good story, because the good stories aren't allowed to be good stories just on their own. And I think Superman, I liked Mr. Terrific character. I thought he was great. I always like seeing Nathan Fillion, so I think Guy Gardner was done well and all the rest. But, second time I watched actually with my mother-in-law, who's a major Superman fan. She's, older, obviously, but she has a Superman shirt she'll wear around when she goes to the gym, and she's a fan of Superman. And I asked her at the end, I'm like, did you like it? And she's like, Superman was good. I thought he was a really good Superman, but like, I didn't know what all the rest of that shit was. She didn't say it that way. She's like, there's just too much, like, the Hawk Girl, and like, we're doing, like, there's just, it's like, I don't know. I guess that's to set up another movie and a sequel that we're gonna do. It just, she was like uh, it felt heavy to me. So, like, it felt like it just had a bunch of these other elements thrown into it because they're trying to make other movies on top of it. And as a result, Superman, the main character, the character I came to see, the character I like, got kind of the short end of the stick because he had to share the screen with a bunch of future franchises. And the movie felt smaller, not bigger as a result. I think that's more of an exact quote from it. The movie felt smaller, not bigger. And I think there's truth to that. I think you look at something like you look at Thunderbolts is not a good example because it's bringing in a bunch of characters from other movies, but you look at Fantastic Four, and hanging over its head was we know that Robert Downey Jr. is going to be Doom, and we know the next movie is an Avengers Doom movie, and we know that the Fantastic Four are coming to the Marvel universe somehow. We saw that little post credit scene of Thunderbolts. So you're watching this whole thing, and it just cuts the knees out from under it of Galactus being a big threat. I like the Fantastic Four movie. I actually liked it a little bit better than Superman. I'm a big Fantastic Four fan. That's why. And so it was nice to see those characters on the screen. Um, and more like their comic book versions than certainly the Trank version. The Jessica Alba version wasn't bad. But the problem with this is it Galactus never felt like a threat at any point in the movie. It felt like well, this is how we're introducing the characters and I'm going to do some stuff and the whole universe the Earth's going to get eaten and it's a big deal and I'll blah blah blah. Like, but I don't really have any. There was never a point where I felt any thought that this was actually going to challenge them because in my head I'm like, I wonder how they're going to set up Doom and how they're going to. I wonder if we're going to have Doom in the post credit scene. I bet we do, and I wonder if they're like, Franklin obviously is baby here, but he's gonna. And the whole time I was in my head, I was like, how is this going to connect to the other Marvel movies? Which made me think less about the movie I was actually watching. And so I think it's complexity that the directors and the writers and these studios have fallen into. And there is money in having a shared universe and all the rest. That's been the hallmark of the Marvel universe. But it's resulting in worse movies because we're not just worrying about the standalone film. We're having to worry about and then with this film. And I think Marvel probably I just think they're very I don't know what's the right word here. They're in a lot of trouble where this is concerned because their entire premise is built on a shared universe at this point. And so they can't escape it. And it's just so wired into everything they do that no movie gets to just be a movie. I might argue that, one thought, I'm not sure if I buy this, but I'll play it out with you. Black Panther made a lot of money and Captain Marvel made a lot of money. Well, look at Black Panther first. By and large, Black Panther it was an immersive world, Wakanda, and it was just its own thing. It by and large didn't have a lot of other nonsense in it. It just got to be Black Panther. And you did have a post-credit thing, and it obviously, you knew Black Panther tied in with Civil War and other stuff, but by and large, it just got to be Black Panther. And it was able to leverage the fact of, hey, this is part of the Marvel universe, and it's got that reputation, and Marvel was red hot at that time, but it just got to be its own movie. And so moviegoers who would see it got to, they didn't know how it was going to end up. I mean, I'm sure they believed that Black Panther wasn't going to, get killed at the end, but it was just, it got to just be itself. Captain Marvel, to some extent, got the same thing. It got to just be itself. Now, Captain Marvel was sandwiched between the two Avengers movies, so you're like, well, it's clearly going to tie into the blip somehow, and it's going to, we had that scene at the end of the Infinity War where Nick Fury's calling Captain Marvel. So, like, you're getting little thing, it was clearly a little bit more tied to stuff, but by and large, and particularly because it was set in the past, Captain Marvel just got to be about a movie about Captain Marvel. And I think that benefited it. It benefited Iron Man when it first came out. It benefited Guardians of the Galaxy. Yes, Thanos was there, but it's still got to just be itself. And I think that's the thing that we've lost a little bit in these movies. So my question for all of you is, way too much talking. I think I've way over-explained. I think the antidote to superhero fatigue is cut back on the shared universe and just let these movies stand alone. Don't make Superman the supporting character in his own movie. And he wasn't. He had plenty of main screen time. But don't make these characters be lesser because you're trying to set up more. If you do that, I think you do it at your own peril. And I think the Marvel universe, the cinematic universe right now is a great example of it's so overburdened with all the other things it has to pull off that you don't just get to enjoy a movie as much as you should. What do you think? Fair? Not fair? Punch holes in my theory? Go nuts. Too many chicks. Okay, yeah. Thanks for listening.